Good evening from New York. In the wake of September 11th, as the Bush administration prepared to strike against al-Qaeda and its Taliban hosts in Afghanistan, it made a big bet by turning to neighboring Pakistan for help. The fact that Pakistan's ruler, General Pervez Musharraf, is a military dictator was overlooked. When al-Qaeda and the Taliban were rapidly routed, America's faith in General Musharraf seemed to have paid off. Since then, around $10 billion in U.S. aid has flowed to Pakistan, more than half of it for military spending. But now, 6 years after 9/11, bin Laden is nowhere to be found. Most experts think he's in Pakistan. And the Taliban is resurgent. So what does America have to show for its support for General Musharraf? This program has reported extensively before on Pakistan, and we believe it is one of the most important datelines in the world today. As that country prepares now for a presidential election, dissatisfaction with Musharraf has soared. There's a strong sense that the fragile balance between Islamic extremists and moderates within the country could disintegrate. But to understand the deeper currents of unrest pulsating through Pakistan, and to understand why Musharraf's army may not have gone after al-Qaeda quite so ferociously, you need to travel to a part of the country rarely mentioned by Western media.
This is the province of Balochistan, in Pakistan's southwest corner. It is a forbidding landscape where, hidden amidst the mountains and ravines, there's an armed insurrection against the Pakistan government. But unlike the tribal areas further north, where Pakistan's U.S.-funded military has made regular peace agreements with Taliban and al-Qaeda sympathizers, the rocky passes and scorching deserts here are watched by remote military outposts. Such makeshift shelters are home to tens of thousands of Pakistani troops, their weapons trained on the surrounding hills. In this mountain camp are members of the Baloch Liberation Army, the BLA. We sent producer-reporter Willem Marks to track down these rebels, to better understand their movement, and to report on the threat they pose to the stability of Pakistan as a whole.
ये हवा में सपोर्ट बलूच मखलूक है बलूच कौम में मुकम्मल ताईद व हिमायत तो जानी माली मारगून है.
This senior Baloch commander has been fighting in the mountains for 3 years and has plenty of support.
ताल्लुकात इदा कैसे दुआएं बलूच कौम में फर्जंदा मौजूद है. यक कबीला शेषान ताल्लुक नेस्त है, यक फैमिली शेषानी ताल्लुक नेस्त है. ये तमाम बलूचिस्तान कुंड कुंडा ये बलूच आता का मरोच मुच भी तक पर एक कौमी जो दिया सरजमीन आजू ये जो दिया.
Although the Baloch are one of Pakistan's smaller ethnic groups, they have ambitions for their own homeland, similar to the Kurds in Iraq. They are using the textbook tactics of guerrilla warfare, rifles and RPGs, against the highly advanced U.S.-supplied technology of General Musharraf's military.
मैं के मैं गुरिला एक में थमरी तमाश्त मर्दुम दा मर्दुम ज़्यादा एर न करना. वो सरमचारानी मैं बीएलए तरीका कार हंचें कि आई मन जंग कनो कन आवानी मन वमा एग्जिस्टिंग कि मुकम्मलें तफसीला मन तरदात न करें. परचे अर कमांडर है आई जिंदा यार चीज़ें के अंडर आस्ता अमावानी तादाद तरगुश तक बाकी इन तरगुश तक न करें. इसी में पार्टी डिस्प्लेन तंजीम कारी वो इसी के अस्तेमा दुश्मन खातिरा.
Like the Kurds in Iraq, the Baloch say they are not driven by religious extremism. Another veteran fighter chafed at any questions about similarities to al-Qaeda and the Taliban.
मैं तहरीक प्योर खालिस कौमी आज़ादी तहरीक और माँ तालिबान ने तहरीक है कि मज़हब बुनियाद है मज़हब बेस है बाकायदा मज़म्मत कुत्ता और मज़म्मत करना जाना.
These Baloch also told us that they had no relationship with Abdul Malik Rigi, the Iranian Baloch commander who operates inside of Iran and on whom we reported a couple of months ago. They told us that they consider Rigi and his band of followers to be religious extremists. Meanwhile, the BLA's fight is simply with Pakistan's rulers, and it's an ongoing and fiery conflict. The militants say this footage shows an ambush on a Pakistani army convoy. They say that ongoing skirmishes and airstrikes have left dozens of civilians dead, some of them children. General Musharraf is taking this militant threat very seriously, and his intelligence agencies have overseen a secretive and unacknowledged crackdown on Baloch opposition leaders.
Let me just say that the situation in Balochistan is severe. There have been hundreds of opposition figures who have been detained. There have been scores who have just disappeared, making them extremely vulnerable to torture or worse.
Ken Roth heads Human Rights Watch, and he's deeply troubled by what's taking place in a region that most Americans have never heard mentioned.
Is the conflict in Balochistan something that we need to be more concerned about?
I think the United States should be deeply concerned about what's happening in Balochistan. First, because the U.S. taxpayer is in essence underwriting the repression that is taking place in Balochistan.
Do you consider that to be a fact?
Well, there's no question that the United States is sending huge amounts of resources to the Pakistani military. And there's no question that the Pakistani military is engaged in a very ugly counterinsurgency campaign in Balochistan. So in that sense, I think it's beyond dispute that the U.S. taxpayer, at least via the U.S. government, is complicit in what's going on in Balochistan.
What's going on in Balochistan is much more than an armed insurrection. The region is rich in natural gas reserves, and for decades the local population has complained that they see little financial return for their own communities. Almost all the gas and the revenue it generates has been piped away by the central government. In addition, the Punjabis, who are the largest ethnic group in Pakistan and who form the backbone of the military and the country's ruling class, are now settling here in Balochistan. The indigenous population worries that their already meager political clout will become rapidly diluted by General Musharraf's policies that emanate from the Pakistani capital, Islamabad.
I think it is in the U.S. national interest to have an effective democratic government running things in Islamabad. Unfortunately, they have a man who at least says the right things toward Washington, but acts quite differently. He is snuffing out democracy rather than encouraging it. He is responding to things, say, in Balochistan, where there are legitimate concerns about access to the economic rewards from natural resources that are located in that province. There's concern about the Baloch population being diluted by immigrants from other parts of Pakistan, and he's responding to that insurgency by arresting people who may have nothing to do with it. They may be a student activist, they may be a journalist, maybe a member of an opposition political party, but arresting hundreds of people, with a significant number of them disappearing them or torturing them. That is, a recipe for things getting worse, not better.
Earlier this year, General Musharraf tried to fire the Chief Justice of Pakistan's Supreme Court, who had been investigating human rights abuses throughout Pakistan, including those in Balochistan. Street demonstrations raged across the nation for months, loosening Musharraf's vice-like grip on power. But in Balochistan, recent crackdowns mean that it is often silent testimony for the strength of Baloch nationalism, which shows up across the province in flags and graffiti. One political movement is the Baloch Student Organization, or BSO, though students are themselves forbidden from joining political parties in Balochistan. The BSO calls for Baloch independence, and the former chairman, Dr. Imdad Baloch, is one of the many high-profile leaders to have been swept up by Pakistani security forces.
I was kidnapped along with 6 other friends from a residential area in Karachi. I was kept in torture cell for 2 months. They used to abuse me, they used to torture me, beat me with the sticks, and hanged me upside down.
He says this abuse only strengthened his resolve and the resolve of his compatriots.
They made me proud of what I am. They made this treatment give me another reason to fight against these occupying forces. This treatment proved to me that whatever I was doing was right. This treatment proved to me that still we need to fight, still we need to shed blood of our beloved ones and of our enemies.
Our tour through Balochistan brought us face to face with ordinary people who say they have suffered at the hands of Musharraf's overbearing security forces. A girl whose brother has been missing for 2 years. A woman whose son, a prominent local politician, was kidnapped outside a downtown Karachi soccer stadium in broad daylight, never to be heard from again. A tribal elder in his 70s who says he was severely beaten by police. And a woman still mourning a teenage son who was gunned down on a busy roadside by security forces.
I feel for these mothers. I feel for these sisters whose husbands and brothers just disappear. They're not even in a jail cell. They don't know whether they're alive. They don't know whether they're dead. And their only crime is for peacefully being identified with the rights of the Baloch people.
Former Pakistani Prime Minister Benazir Bhutto may soon be responsible for trying to quell this growing unrest in Balochistan. She recently announced that she will be returning to Pakistan after 8 years in exile. She left amidst accusations of corruption, but hopes to once again run for high office.
Would you want to end all military operations inside Balochistan if you came to power?
Well, I certainly think that military operations against the nationalist leaders must be stopped. And I see that the military regime is very effective in killing or arresting the nationalist, secular, moderate leaders of Balochistan. But somehow they seem to be totally ineffective when it means going after the militant cells and the organizations that are actually giving succor and support to the pro-Taliban elements. To give you an example, one of the religious parties, JUI, is part of the government in Balochistan, and a wanted terrorist was arrested from the house of their Secretary General. So these people are indirectly in government, and this is the problem. So yes, action would certainly be needed, police action, and when need be, military action against those who are terrorist elements or criminal elements who are violating the law of the land. But I think an olive branch really needs to be given to the Baloch leaders who are nationalists and who do command support in their areas. If the nationalists are squeezed against the wall, then we are creating a vacuum in Balochistan for the pro-Taliban elements to fill. So there's a need in Pakistan for us to get the moderate forces together on one platform. That's not happening.
Are the human rights problems in Balochistan emblematic of human rights problems throughout Pakistan, or is it much worse in Balochistan?
Well, you know, it's very difficult to say, is the frying pan hotter or is the fire hotter? Once you reach a certain level of persecution, it's persecution. When I became Prime Minister, I reached out to the Baloch leaders. My government did not stop them from being elected to the provincial assemblies during elections. They were elected. We provided enormous developmental funds for them to administer so that they felt empowered. They ran their own administration. We built ports, we built roads, we provided drinking water by building dams, and we tried to meet the needs of the people.
Musharraf has also been building dams as part of his attempt to bring economic development to the province. The Mirani Dam in southern Balochistan is one of the largest such projects in Pakistan, part of the millions of dollars earmarked for the province. In a small tea house not far from the dam, a man calling himself Shafi Ali Baloch works as a tea waiter, serving customers in his village. He says he was once a prosperous vegetable farmer until the Mirani Dam flooded his land and ruined his livelihood. During the recent monsoon season, the dam's sluice gates failed. Many were killed, and thousands were left stranded when their villages were washed away. This is a common refrain across the province. Development projects, such as new road construction, are not designed to benefit the ordinary people, but instead to further enrich the already wealthy elite. This is Gwadar, a rapidly growing metropolis on Balochistan's barren coast.